Colorado is a land of contradictions. Its mountains soar into the clouds, its plains stretch endlessly, and its small towns carry the rhythm of quiet American life. But beneath that beauty lies a history of shadows, of people who vanished or were taken, of families left with questions that echo for decades. 2 women separated by 6 years became part of that hidden history. Their names were Tammy Lynn Cheeks and Bonnie Baker. Their stories, though different, share a haunting theme: justice delayed or perhaps denied. This is not just about cold cases. It is about memory, survival, and the cruel reality of how quickly some lives are dismissed while others fight to be remembered. It was November 14, 1992, when a group of hunters made a discovery that would scar them forever. In rural Weld County, Colorado, the land is vast, the roads sparse, and the irrigation ditches deep and silent. That morning, those hunters stumbled upon a body in one such ditch near the intersection of County Roads 20 and 51. The woman was small in stature, barely 5 feet tall. She had been left in a place where few would wander and fewer would notice. Her name was Tammy Lynn Cheeks. She was just 24 years old. Tammy's life was far from easy. She had grown up with dreams, laughter, and songs on the radio, but like many in Denver's East Colfax neighborhood, she fell into cycles of poverty, addiction, and street survival. Those who knew her remembered her quick smile and her warmth, but they also remembered her struggles. She was part of a community often ignored by the world: women who worked the streets, women who battled addiction, women who lived night by night. For law enforcement, her lifestyle became a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it provided leads: she was known in certain areas, known to certain people. On the other hand, it fed into a bias that her case was less urgent, her life somehow less worthy of exhaustive pursuit. The Weld County Sheriff's Office opened a case, but from the beginning they were chasing a ghost. There were no witnesses, no fingerprints. No one came forward with the crucial detail that could explain how Tammy ended up in that ditch. The cause of death was never publicly revealed. Her family, however, has never forgotten. They speak of her as more than just an entry in a file. They remember her as a sister, a daughter, a young woman who wanted better, who wanted change. They remember her laughter and the way she could brighten a room, even in the middle of her struggles. But in 1992, Colorado law enforcement was dealing with more than one case like Tammy's. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, several women tied to Colfax Avenue, many of them sex workers, were found dead in Weld County and surrounding areas. Bodies appeared in ditches, fields, and remote roadsides. The similarities raised alarms. Was there a predator at work, targeting women who lived on the margins? Or were these isolated tragedies, unconnected except by geography and vulnerability? For investigators, the pattern was chilling but inconclusive. Some argued there had to be a serial offender. Others suggested these were crimes of opportunity, committed by different men who believed no one would ever miss their victims. Whatever the truth, the lack of evidence left Tammy's case, like so many others in the unsolved files. Time erases evidence. Rural Colorado landscapes shift with the seasons. Wind, rain, snow, and sun all work against investigators. What could have been preserved in 1992 was likely lost before it was even found. And yet the sheriff's office continues to list Tammy's case among their active cold cases, hoping that new forensic technology or a long-held secret might one day provide the answer. The hardest truth about Tammy's story is not only how she died, but how quickly society forgot her. For decades, her case received little attention. Only occasional press releases or cold case listings kept her name alive. For her family, each anniversary is another reminder of the silence, another reminder that someone out there still knows what happened. 6 years after Tammy's body was found, another Colorado woman vanished. This time, the case began not with a discovery in a ditch, but with an absence. In June 1998, 47-year-old Bonnie Baker lived in an apartment on West Louisiana Avenue in Denver. She was dependable, known to her co-workers, the kind of woman who showed up when she said she would. So when she failed to appear for work, alarm bells rang quickly. Friends and co-workers tried to call her, but there was no answer. Days passed, then weeks. Flyers went up. But Bonnie was gone. Her disappearance unsettled those who knew her. Unlike many missing persons cases in Colorado, Bonnie was not someone who lived off the grid or avoided attention. She had a home, a job, routines. Her vanishing was abrupt, unexplained, and deeply suspicious. For a year, her case lingered as a missing person report. Then, in July 1999, the truth surfaced in the most chilling way possible. On Navajo tribal land in New Mexico, 2 boys riding horses stumbled upon skeletal remains. Among them was a skull, later identified as Bonnie's. The discovery pushed her case from missing person to homicide, but the circumstances were even more complex than investigators could have imagined. Her remains were found hundreds of miles from Denver, across state lines, on sovereign tribal land. The investigation required cooperation between Denver police, the New Mexico office of the medical investigator, and federal authorities. At first, answers remained elusive. Who had taken Bonnie from Denver to New Mexico? How had her body ended up in such a remote location? And who had motive to kill her? As years passed, suspicion focused on one man, Crespin Nin Perez, Bonnie's boyfriend at the time of her disappearance. The relationship, friends recalled, had been turbulent, and yet, building a case strong enough to bring to court would take time. It wasn't until January 2021, more than 2 decades later, that Nini Perez was arrested in Mexico and extradited to Colorado. In March 2022, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in Bonnie's death. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. For Bonnie's family and friends, the outcome was bittersweet. Justice had come, but it had taken nearly a quarter of a century. The years in between had been filled with pain, uncertainty, and the nagging suspicion that the truth might never be known. When we place Tammy's story beside Bonnie's, we see both differences and eerie similarities. Tammy's case remains unsolved, her killer unknown, her family still waiting. Bonnie's case, after decades, finally saw a conviction. But both stories reveal how vulnerable women, especially those with limited social power, can fall through the cracks of justice. Tammy was dismissed by many at the time because of her lifestyle. Bonnie's case took decades because evidence was scattered across jurisdictions and borders. Both women, however, were human beings with lives that mattered. The pattern of unsolved cases in Weld County during the 1980s and early 1990s continues to haunt investigators. Were Tammy and others the victims of a single predator, a serial offender who knew the back roads of Colorado? Or were they tragic coincidences, separate crimes that looked like a pattern only in hindsight? What is undeniable is the fear these cases left behind. In Weld County, women who worked the streets learned to look over their shoulders. In Denver, Bonnie's friends learned how fragile safety can be. For families, the lesson was harsher still, that justice, if it comes at all, can take decades. Cold cases are not simply unsolved files gathering dust. They are stories waiting for answers. They are unfinished chapters in the lives of families and communities. In recent years, forensic science has advanced in ways unimaginable in the early 1990s. DNA, once considered unusable, can now be analyzed. Genetic genealogy has solved cases once thought hopeless. Cold case units across the country are reopening files like Tammy's, hoping that new tools can succeed where old ones failed. For Bonnie's family, persistence paid off. The extradition, arrest, and conviction of Crespin Nini Perez show that time does not erase accountability. For Tammy's family, hope remains that one day technology or conscience will bring answers. But beyond science, there is another reason to remember these cases: dignity. Tammy and Bonnie were not statistics. They were women with lives, laughter, pain, and hope. Forgetting them is the final injustice. Remembering them is the first step toward change. The stories of Tammy Lynn Cheeks and Bonnie Baker remind us of a difficult truth. Colorado's beauty hides shadows. Behind every mountain range and every quiet road lies the possibility of stories untold. These two women's lives, separated by 6 years but united by mystery, show us how fragile justice can be and how much persistence it takes to uncover the truth. Tammy's killer is still out there, or perhaps long gone, but her case remains open. Bonnie's killer has been brought to justice, but only after decades of waiting. Their stories ask us a question. How many other names, how many other lives lie forgotten in the files of time? And perhaps more importantly, will we choose to remember them?